All right, Jet fans, Frankie from Flatbush here, FSPN. If you're new to the channel, we'd really enjoy it if you would just subscribe. Click the subscribe button. Today, we are going to talk about these blockbuster trades that happened. It's Monday, June the 1st, and some blockbuster trades went down in the NFL. None pertaining to the Jets directly. But there's a lot of implications for the Jets, both this season and long term, pluses and minuses. First of all, you might have heard the Browns traded Myles Garrett for a huge package of picks and Jared Verse. And there's a lot of things that go into this trade, including the Rams saying F them picks. I do think they might eventually regret this strategy, although they're all in. So if they win the Super Bowl this year, they are not going to care about any picks or anything like that. And that's what they're really trying to do with this trade this year. Next year, they got to win a Super Bowl to make it worthwhile. Now, that's the Rams, and they have a good chance of going to the Super Bowl this year. And I've often said that it's going to be the Rams and Chargers, and the NFL will hate that. The LA Super Bowl, where both teams don't really have a big fan base, and basically total California Super Bowl, where the rest of the country would be like, meh. That would be a disaster for the NFL, I think. But that's really the two best teams probably going into the year. I think the NFL will do what they can to engineer a miraculous season by the Chiefs, let's say. Surprising. But in any event, so that's what the Rams are doing. Now, how does this affect the Browns? So Myles Garrett gets the hell out of the AFC. That's good for the Jets. And Garrett goes off of the Browns, which is also good for the Jets because we play the Browns early this year. Now, they did receive Jared Verse back, and Verse is a very good player, but he's no Myles Garrett, who is. So as for this year, this trade is a plus for the Jets because we don't have to try and block probably the best defensive player in the NFL, Myles Garrett. He's a monster. Jared Verse is no easy task, but a lot easier than Garrett, of course. So overall, that is a plus for us, meaning that Browns game is more likely a win on the schedule now than it was before this trade. Again, Jared Verse, very good player, no doubt about it. They're looking toward the future with all these picks they got. But if you just look at Garrett versus Verse, Garrett's obviously much better. And so they downgraded at that position if you just look at it that way. And then, they're looking toward the future with all the draft picks. Now, there's that, and then you could look at the Browns roster. There's a couple of players, if they're going to continue to sell, that they might want to get rid of. One being Grant Delpit, the strong safety. That's a guy we could have interest in. Now, I don't think they're going to do a fire sale per se, but if we make it worth their while, a guy like that who's okay, he's not great, and he's at the tradable age. 28, 29 is when these guys get traded, typically. Because at that point they're kind of past their peak, but they still have enough value to be traded, and the team trading them wants to just get younger and get picks back. And the team acquiring has a need for that type of player. This is a perfect situation for us. We need a strong safety, and Grant Delpit's better than what we got. And he's not elite or anything like that. He's a better, above average kind of player. That's the kind of player we should be looking to get onto this team. Would help us situationally and shouldn't cost too much either. So that could be a guy we look at. Also, defensive tackle Malik Collins is an above average defensive tackle. Do they really... Am I saying his name right? Malik Collins? Let's just make sure. They have a defensive tackle. I think that's right. Who's okay, but not going to be part of their future. He's somewhat older. The Browns. Yeah, Malik Collins, right. Malik Collins, he's 31 years old. For us, he would be a backup and fill a role. Again, for them, it looks like, according to ESPN's depth charts, he's going to start for them. And maybe they would rather have some draft picks and let some young guys get in there and see what they have rather than this old guy who could play a role for us. And, it seems to me like the Browns are gearing up for 27, to get a quarterback and then get out of the Deshaun Watson contract and then sort of like have a lot of young pieces, good pieces around so that the young quarterback has a chance to succeed. And if that's the case, you don't need Malik Collins. You don't need Grant Delpit. They're not people that you need in that type of situation. So those are two guys that I would look at for maybe the Jets to trade for. So number one, this makes it easier to win the game against the Browns this year. Number two, there's a couple of guys that we might want to look at as far as a trade if it makes sense for both parties. Now, the other thing with this trade, Jeremy Fowler reported that, quote, sources say LA is giving early impressions that it won't extend 2027 free agents Puka Nacua, Byron Young, Kobe Turner, and Steve Avila this summer. Perhaps that changes, but deals are not on the radar right now. That's quote-unquote Jeremy Fowler. The Jets should sign all of them. We have so much money next year, it's going to make your head spin, and we could use all of those players. Puka is one of the very best wide receivers in all of football. Byron Young is a very good defensive end tackle. Same thing with Kobe Turner, so just sort of like young-ish reinforcements on the defensive line. And then Steve Avila can play guard. He could play center. And we could use that. So we could sign all of them. So this trade, if this holds up true, now this is Jeremy Fowler. It's not, MPL football or something like this. Dov Kleiman. This is a real person, Jeremy Fowler, saying, looks like they're going to let all four of these people walk. Now, it's hard to believe, but if so, that would be a great situation for us because we could splurge on all of them. We could play at the top of the markets next year for the first time in a long time. And those would be four players that fit needs and are the right ages and all of that kind of thing that align with us perfectly, that would fit our spending, our need to spend and ability to spend. We could be at the top of the market for each of those positions, and that would be four very nice additions, exactly what we need. So if that's how this plays out, then you go, wow, this was a significant trade for the Jets, meaning, Myles, Garrett going to the Rams. Well, we'll see how they play it, but boy, oh boy, that could be good for us. And then on top of that, then the next thing, the other blockbuster trade that everybody kind of knew already that was going to happen was A.J. Brown went over to the Patriots. So one thing nobody's really... Now, A.J. Brown, of course, based on the roster that they had before the trade, makes the Patriots obviously a lot better. But what people are not talking about is the fact that, okay, they traded those picks and 2028 first-round picks, so they still kept their next year first. But how much better is A.J. Brown going to be than Steph Diggs was for the Patriots next year? He's going to be better, but how much better? A lot better? They also picked up Romeo Doubs this offseason, so maybe one of their wide receivers gets cut because they don't have room for everybody. And, there's a couple of guys that we might want to take a look at. Now, we probably don't have that much room on the roster, but hey, if a guy like Keishawn Butte gets, it's just a waiver wire pickup, that's something you look at. Or a Kyle Williams, speedy wide receiver. Or a Pop Douglas, a little slot possession receiver. These are people who could become available, even Mac Hollins perhaps. These are people who could fit on our roster, and maybe they are not long for the Patriot roster as they try to piece things together for another run this year. So very solid pickup, obviously, for the Patriots. The only thing I would say is how much better, 5%, 10%, 20% better is Mr. Brown going to be than Mr. Diggs. So we'll have to see. Diggs is still unemployed. He'll land somewhere. But that's really the impact. Those are some pretty big impacts, actually, for the Jets of these trades. I mean, we got to play A.J. Brown, so that's the negative thing, is their team got a little bit better, so they're going to be harder to beat this year. But long term, they lose a couple of picks. And maybe they have to cut loose one of their wide receivers. We are second on the waiver wire position, so anybody that the Raiders don't want, we can pick up. And then with the Myles Garrett trade, there's a lot of benefit to the Jets. Myles Garrett, we don't have to play him this year, so that makes them easier to beat. Not easy, but easier to beat than they were with Garrett on the team. And then if that causes the Rams to not sign any of those 4 players, that would be something, because we should be all over all of them. All of them. And we have the money to do so next year, so could be very exciting times in Jetland.